Well, hello everybody and welcome to Jeff's Baking Blog. Today I'm going to make a mascarpone and strawberry tart. So the only baking element of this is to bake a tart case, and you could buy a tart case if you wanted to, but I'm going to make mine. So it's going to be a 9-inch tart, and I'll make the base for that in a fluted 9-inch tart tin, 23 centimetres, that has a loose bottom. It's going to take a while because once we've made the pastry dough, we have to chill that for an hour, then roll it out, and then either chill it for about another hour or freeze it for about 30 minutes while the oven preheats. But once that's baked and cooled down, it only takes minutes to assemble the tart. And the other thing you can think of is you can make the pastry case in advance if you want to, the day before. So if you're having visitors of some sort, if they're allowed where you are, then you can make the pastry case the day before, and then just before the visitors arrive you can assemble the tart. So I'll go on to the ingredients, and for the pastry I have 175 grams, which is 1 cup plus a scant 3 tablespoons of plain flour. I have 75 grams, half a cup plus 2 tablespoons of icing sugar, 113 grams, which is 1 stick of cold unsalted butter, which I've cut into cubes, the yolk from 1 medium egg, that would be large in the USA, 1 tablespoon, 15 millilitres of double cream, half a teaspoon of vanilla extract or vanilla bean paste, and a pinch of salt. So that's everything for the pastry tart case. And then for the filling, I have 500 grams, 17.5 ounces of mascarpone. That works out at about 2 cups plus 1.5 tablespoons. I have 50 millilitres of double cream, which works out at 3 tablespoons plus 1 teaspoon. I have 5 millilitres, 1 teaspoon of vanilla bean extract, the zest from a lemon. I have 200 grams, which works out at 10 tablespoons of raspberry jam. Now the amount of jam you use, you can vary, you can use less than that if you want to. And I have 500 grams of strawberries, which is again 17.5 ounces, about a pound would be good enough, I'm sure. And I've washed those, and I'm going to hull them, and then I'll cut them into pieces, and the pieces will vary depending, because some of these strawberries are much larger than others. But I don't need any of those yet, I just need the stuff for the pastry. So the strawberries and the mascarpone can go in the fridge while the pastry chills and such like. So I'll go on and make the pastry first. And I'm going to do the pastry in my immersion blender processor bowl, and I'll start off by putting the flour and the pinch of salt and the sugar in, and I'm just going to give those a quick pulse to get those combined with each other just a little bit. That's good enough. So then I'm going to put my butter in as well. And I'm just going to shake the flour a little bit and get the butter coated so that it doesn't stick too much to the sides as we process it. And I want to process that until the butter is incorporated and the texture is like fine breadcrumbs or coarse sand. That will only take a few seconds. So I think that's probably good enough. Yes, that looks fine. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the cream and the vanilla into the little bowl with my egg yolk. And I'm going to whisk that, break the egg up, and just whisk them together. That's good enough. And then I'm going to drizzle that onto my flour mixture. And I'm going to process that until the mixture begins to clump together and form a dough. And I can see quite easily that is now clumping. So I'm going to tip that into a bowl. I could tip it onto the counter, but just for ease, I'm going to tip it into a bowl. Carefully removing the sharp blade. And with that in the bowl, I'm going to use my hand to pull it into a dough, and it does it very, very quickly indeed, as you can see. And I'm going to wrap that in plastic wrap, and I'll form it into a disc which I shall flatten so until it's about 5 or 6 inches in diameter. It doesn't matter too much. I'll wrap that up, put it in the fridge, and I'll chill that for 1 hour. And after an hour I'll come back and we'll roll it out and put it into our tart tin, and then we have to freeze it ready for blind baking. It's been an hour and the dough has rested in the fridge for that time, so I'm now going to roll it out on a floured work surface, and I need to roll that out so that it's large enough to completely cover the base and up the sides of this 9-inch tart tin. So that would be about 11 inches in diameter. And if the pastry cracks and splits, it doesn't matter because we can patch it. This is a very forgiving type of pastry. And I think that's probably good enough. So what I'm going to do is roll that up on my rolling pin, and I'm going to try to drop that into the tart tin and lower it in so that it covers the bottom. And then I'll push down at the side like that. And where it's actually a little bit thin at the side, I'm going to take a bit of the excess and press that into it, just so that it's a bit thicker at those sides. And I'm going to trim off the excess. That will let me see that I have a reasonably thick crust all the way around the edge, and if I don't, I will patch it with a bit more. So it looks a little bit thin just here, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to push a little bit more of the dough into that. And I think that's good enough like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover that with my plastic wrap again, and I'm going to put it into the freezer for 30 minutes. And while it's freezing, I'm going to preheat my oven to 190 Celsius. That's 170 Celsius with a fan, 375 Fahrenheit. And then in 30 minutes, I'll come back and we will cover the base and the sides with some aluminium foil and fill it with some baking beans so that we can blind bake it. So I've chilled this in the freezer for 30 minutes and my oven is now preheated. So here I have 2 sheets of aluminium foil which I've put together, and I need to press those down into the tin, the tart tin, to take the shape of the pastry. So I've got that all the way round, pressed up against the pastry. And then I'm just going to trim off some of that excess, but I also want to cover the edge of the pastry with the foil, so I don't want to trim it all off. And with that covered, I'm then going to take my baking beans, which are ceramic, and put them into the tart tin. Now if you don't have ceramic baking beans, you could use dried beans, you could use rice, you could use dried pasta. Having used it for this though, you would not be able to use it for eating later. I'll spread that out right up to the edge. And I'm going to put that into the oven and I'm going to bake it for 30 minutes. After 30 minutes, I will take it out of the oven and remove the beans and the aluminium foil and put it in the oven and bake it for a further 8 minutes. That is to make sure that I've cooked the base right through where it's in contact with the aluminium foil. Then I will take it out of the oven and I'm going to allow it to cool completely in the tart tin. And the reason for that is that this is very fragile. If you try to take it out of the tart tin while it is still warm, the sides will break off. And I know that because I did this recipe the other day and that's exactly what happened to me and I had to scrap it. So let it cool completely before you take it out of the tart tin. I baked the tart case with the baking beans and the aluminium foil in for 30 minutes. Then I removed the aluminium foil and the baking beans and baked it for a further 8 minutes. I've allowed it to cool down and I've taken it out of the tin and I put it onto a plate, and that's what it looks like. So it's baked quite nicely. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to spread over my raspberry jam onto the base. And I've actually stirred this raspberry jam just to loosen it up a little bit, because it was quite firm when it came out of the jar. And this is seedless. You don't have to use seedless, but I prefer seedless when I'm doing things like this. And just spread it over. So that's good enough. I'm going to put that to one side for a moment now, and I'm going to work on the mascarpone. Now, I've kept the mascarpone and the cream refrigerated because mascarpone does tend to have a habit of splitting if it's mixed with something at a different temperature. So I'm going to put it into a larger bowl. Just for mixing. As you can see, it's quite thick. And I should say that if you wanted to, you could actually add some icing sugar in as you're mixing this, just to sweeten it. I don't want it to be sweet. So I'm not. But I know that some people like to have it sweeter. And with the mascarpone in the bowl, I'm going to simply add in my double cream, and the vanilla, and the lemon zest, just like that. And I'm going to mix that, but I'm not going to mix it very much. I don't want it to curdle or separate if I can avoid it. Just on a low speed. And I think that's as much as I need to mix it. It's just to get those things combined, basically. And then I'm going to put that into a piping bag just for ease. And I have a piping bag here, and I'm simply going to put my mixture in, and so I'm going to pipe it just fairly roughly. Onto the raspberry jam, and I can make a second layer with that piped roughly on the jam. I'm just going to smooth it just a little bit. It's still very thick, so it's not going to spread particularly well, but it's good enough, just like that. And then I'm going to pipe the remainder on And I'm going to spread that over as well. I mean, you could just spoon it in and spread it if you wanted to. Just like that. That's good enough. And then I'm going to put my strawberries onto that. And what I've done is I have hulled the strawberries and I've cut them into pieces, and I'm going to put them onto the tart, using pieces of roughly the same size like that. And that is all I'm going to do to it. Now you could, if you wanted to, sprinkle a little bit of icing sugar over the top. You could cut the strawberries smaller and mix some into the mascarpone if you wanted to, but I think that looks good enough. And I'm going to chill that for an hour, and then after an hour I will come back and I'll cut a piece and we'll have a taste of it. It's been over an hour now, and I have had my mascarpone and strawberry tart chilling in the fridge, and I've now cut a slice out and I've already had a little taste. But this is what the tart looks like once it's been sliced, and as you can see, the pastry is very well cooked, as it would be because we blind baked it. And I'll have a taste of it. The pastry is lovely and crisp and short and buttery, and then there's the juiciness of the strawberries as you bite into them, and that's complemented by the thick creaminess of the mascarpone, and the raspberry jam comes through as well. So as I say, you can sprinkle some icing sugar on if you want. You can even put some icing sugar into the mascarpone and cream as you whip them together. But I don't think that's necessary because the fruitiness of the strawberries and the raspberry jam give you all the sweetness that you need, really. So that's going to be it for this recipe. I hope you've enjoyed it, and if you have, please give me the thumbs up below the video and click to subscribe to my YouTube channel. In the top right hand corner of the screen there will be an eye that you can click on, and that will take you to a link for this recipe, and I'll put a link in the video below. And I'll be back with another recipe in the very near future. So until then, happy baking.